Hey everyone, Bob Kendall here. Just want to thank you all for watching my videos. If you do want to support the channel, go to www.kendallreport.com/wavetech. Sign up for our software. You get market grid on 165 individual stocks and indices. You also will get 16,500 buy and sell signals on our entire database. I thank you so much for supporting the channel. Those of you who have already signed up, thank you so much. Welcome everyone to the Kendall Report, where I share my 41 years of experience to help you manage your portfolios and protect your wealth. Remember to subscribe, like, and share these videos. As we look back on yesterday, it appears to be an instant replay of last week. We saw a big spike on Monday, a lower close off the highs, and then a sell-off on Tuesday. It looks like we're going to continue to go in a sideways mode as we come into Wednesday's session. I don't see any elements that are likely to drive the markets higher from this current configuration. Yesterday's action was dominated by retail sales missing, and then we saw Walmart come in with a miss, and that set the tone early on. As the markets traded toward their lows, the home builder sentiment came out, and it was at an all-time high. The move to the suburbs trade is continuing. I haven't talked about that for a while. In the live stream tomorrow, which I'm going to do at 2 o'clock instead of 1:30 like I usually do, I will discuss lumber and some of the other elements out there that look like are driving and are confirming what's going on in the housing markets. There's a lot of folks talking about housing bubbles, all kinds of things. The fact that prices are at a high level doesn't mean it's a bubble. We'll talk about that tomorrow also in the live stream. But as we come into early session, we're likely to see a continuation of how the market closed on Tuesday, as we just saw a waffling and a movement down around the 3,600 level on the S&P. One of the things that we saw yesterday, the S&P was down 0.5, NASDAQ down 0.2, and the Russell was up 0.4. We're continuing to see that rotation trade unfold, and I just want to emphasize some things that I talked about in last night's video. I noticed comments on the channel that folks are saying, why don't you just buy the Russell and not be short the NASDAQ? But this is not a directional trade. This trade will work whether the NASDAQ goes down faster than the Russell goes down, or if it goes up slower than the Russell goes up. As I've been saying, I still expect to see the Russell, the small cap, mid cap rotation continue. We saw some backing up in the treasuries, but basically we're staying well above 0.82, 0.85 on the treasuries on the 10-year. That's going to keep a solid bid in the financials and also keep this rotation going in the mid-cap and small-cap areas. The housing story will continue again today as we have housing starts and the permits coming out. I'm expecting to see these metrics continue to come in really strong. The housing market is one of the bright spots in the economy. I know many folks seem to think the economy shut down. It's far from it. In fact, there's a lot of elements in this economy that are absolutely moving better than they were even before the crisis began. And the housing market is one of those. Anyway, let's go ahead and dig into the charts, see what the setup is for tomorrow. And remember, the live stream will be at 2 p.m. Eastern time, not 1:30 p.m. as I usually do them. Let's go ahead and take a look at those charts. As I begin the review of the WaveTech database, we continue to see a positive rotation. There was another 350 new buy signals versus about 125, 130 sell signals, another bullish rotation. It pushed the percent bullish up to 66.38. The duration and the other elements that I've been talking about over the last several days is continuing to stay in check, as these new trades will keep the duration number down. So we've still got at least another 25 to 35 days in this cycle of the new buys coming into the database before we'll start to get anywhere near an overbought or any place where we're likely to see any substantial correction. So what this is telling us about the rotations going on, that we're going to grind sideways here for several days. We should see a resumption of the uptrend sometime toward the end of the week or early next week as these patterns start to unfold. As we review the S&P 500 futures, they're down 5 handles overnight, 0.14. We were down a little more. We traded down to 33.95 overnight. We're seeing a very flat session. Volatility's been low. Volume's been low. Everything has been minimal as this pattern has been unfolding tonight. There's only about 45,000 contracts traded. In a normal busy evening, we'd be closer to about 80 to 90,000. So it's a very quiet session so far overnight. There's very little news coming out tomorrow or anything, as I mentioned in the opening comments, that are going to drive this market either way. I suspect that we're seeing some of the momentum burn off, but what's going to come into play is the 10-period moving average. It's currently 35.60. It's rising at about 17 handles per day, so that's going to push it up to about 35.75 today. As we look at the market grid, S1 is 95.93, S2 35.78, and R1 is 35.20. So far overnight, we've had a 36.11 high, low 35.95. We printed an S1 just short of R1. My expectation is that we could have a slight leaning to the downside again today and push it down toward the S2 number, which would be 35.78. So look for an R1 S2 number, but if we can't trade below S1 in the first 3 hours today, you could see a reversal and go back and start to test the R2 number, which would be 36.35 on the upside. We are seeing PPM1 starting to cut through its first derivative. It's lost a lot of momentum already. We're seeing it stall, but the PPM3 is actually turning up and accelerating. So all of the basic trends that are driving this market are still in place and are going to dominate as we go forward. As I review the S&P cash, you see that the market grid has turned down just slightly. As we look at the grid expectations for today, S1 is 36.01. We went out at 36.09 yesterday. S2, 35.92. This would be very close to yesterday's low that we printed at 35.88. So my expectations are that we're probably going to do an S2, R1 S2, just like with the futures. If we can't trade down below the S2 number, 35.92, then look for a reversal and challenge some of the higher numbers, R1, maybe R2. There really isn't a lot out there to drive the markets from a pure news standpoint. There are some other earnings reports coming out. We've seen a lot of the big ones come out already. My expectation is that market participants will start to look toward Thursday as we go through probably a very sideways choppy day on Wednesday. The next market that I'll cover is the NASDAQ. It continues to trade in a very sideways range. We're hovering just above the 10-day moving average. I mentioned this yesterday as a key level. Yesterday it was at 11,897. The low yesterday was 11,953. So we didn't quite get there. Today it's 11,918. The low overnight has been 11,932. As we look at the market grid, S1 is 11,935. So we're basically printed an S1 number. If we did go down to S2, it would be just below this 10-period moving average. There is some weakness starting to show up on this 10-period moving average, which is demonstrated by looking at the PPM1, which is at 0.18, and crossing through its first derivative, just like on the S&P. So we are seeing some moderate weakness showing up, and the possibilities of trading down toward the lower end of the market grid is possible, but S2, S3 are going to be substantial. As I just mentioned, the 10-day moving average, 11,918, is going to be a pretty solid number as we come into Wednesday's session. A break below that, then look for 11,890, and I would look for a reversal back up if those levels are hit early in the session. The next market I'll cover is the Russell. The Russell continues to move higher, as I mentioned in the opening commentary. It continues to outpace the NASDAQ. We did see it trade yesterday up toward the 1795 level. R2 was 1804, R1 1794. So basically we printed a R1 number. The low yesterday, 1755, was S3 on the downside. Exact hit, 1755.55 was S3. The low was 1755.34. We saw a nice reversal off of these levels. I continue to expect to see this market move higher. This is the third day in the pattern. We're likely to see at least 2 more days higher. And I do want you to notice that the PPMs are much stronger. As I just mentioned, on the S&P, we're seeing PPM 1 penetrate its first derivative. On the NASDAQ, we're seeing the same type of configuration. As we look at the Russell, it's not even close to penetrating the first derivative. Also, it's up at 1.05, which is a very robust number, and all of the trend numbers on the Russell are much stronger than the other indexes, and this just confirms that entire bias that I've been talking to you about for a while, but it's really starting to show up over the last 2 weeks. Next market I'll cover is the US dollar. The dollar is very quiet. It's unchanged on the night. I did not cover this yesterday, but we are seeing PPMs trying to turn a little higher. They're very stable. We continue to just drift lower in this pattern. So far overnight, we've seen a print down to 92.43. S1 is 92.35. R1 92.51. That's been the exact high so far tonight. Look for R1, S1. I don't see a lot of volatility coming in this market. We could print down to S2, which would be a 92.26 number, but it looks to me that it appears that if we're going to have any movement to the upside, that we would move above the 92.51 level, most likely move toward R2 in this pattern. So S1, R2 would be expectation for today. The next market I'll cover is gold. It's continuing to drift sideways in this pattern. It's drifting down towards some of the support levels that I discussed in last night's video. Moved down toward the S2 number overnight, 1872. The extreme supports I've been talking about, the 1865 down to 1850 levels are going to be substantial support. I don't see this market rolling over and taking those numbers out. We're not seeing any acceleration, and in fact, PPM 3 is actually turning up, which is confirming that we're going to stay in this sideways range. The final market that I'm going to cover tonight is Bitcoin. I talked about this in last week's live stream, that the targets were moved to 18,192 were in play, and that I expected to see this level hit. So far overnight, we've seen 18,266. This is satisfying the minimum objective, but the higher objective of 21,678 to 23,721. I don't see this market stopping here. We're way too close to the all-time highs. Over 9% overnight right now. We're getting massive acceleration across the board on PPM 1, 2, and 3. Now, the last time that we had a buy signal was at 11,134 on August 9th. I've been talking about this for the last couple months. We're seeing this breakout acceleration. We are exceeding also the RXT number, but the RXT number doesn't seem to have as good a signal on Bitcoin. It tends to drift higher in the power and the momentum here. I don't have any expectations for this, but to continue to move toward these upward objectives that I just talked about. This will complete the video for tonight. Remember, the live stream will be at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, not at 1:30. I look forward to talking to you at that time.